Hi, welcome to another episode of Nature Pal Chats, a program that encourages nature study and learning about God's creation. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Instagram. I'm Andy Gould.
I'm Allison Bravenick.
I'm Shannon Kelly.
And I'm Christy Cox. Welcome back. Thanks for watching. Today we're going to talk about nature in the city. This is actually a requested topic. A lot of people asked for this, and just to throw this out there, if you have anything that you want us to talk about, put it in the comments section, and we would love to chat about some of your ideas and topics that you'd like us to discuss. So first I want to start with a really cool quote that I feel like relates to this topic. It's, I see no more than you, but I have trained myself to notice what I see. That's Sherlock Holmes, the adventure of the blanched soldier. So I know for myself, I would consider this area that I live in a suburb, but we live really close to Washington, D.C., and we go into the city every now and then. And just because we are nature-loving people, we have trained our eyes to notice things. I think about this one time we were walking past the park I think it's Lafayette Circle, which is right across from the White House, and there's benches and there's trees, very organized nature. And my kids noticed right next to the bench there was like mud and cigarette butts. It was really gross, but there was squirrel prints, like paw prints in the mud, and they were all like, "Oh, look, squirrel prints!" And there was a lady sitting on the bench, and she was like hanging over trying to look to see, and I thought she looked at us like we were crazy, like who cares, you know. But I took a picture of it, and it's like cigarette butts and all, you know, with the squirrel prints, you know, just
squirrel smoking a cigarette.
Exactly. But there's stuff to be observed no matter where you're at. You just have to adjust your eyes to see. But I think when you're going into the city, or if you live into the city and you're incorporating nature study into your days, I feel like it's going to be a more structured nature study versus if you live out in the country and your kids are just wandering through the wildflowers in the fields. There's more structure to it. Like you could visit museums, or there's gardens in the city. So there's specific things that you could do, and I think that it takes maybe more planning, but it's more structured. What have you guys experienced? Or
Well, I would consider where I live a suburb also, and I don't know how helpful I'll be in this, but I think I've learned about most of the places that we go through word of mouth, asking around other people that like to get out in nature around us, finding, you know, new trails through them or nature centers. And then I also have, in the beginning when we first started getting out more, looking up places online. And we started out going to just nature centers where it's also very structured. They usually have, you know, where you can go in and they'll have animals you can look at, and, you know, just different things from the surrounding area so that you can learn more about the place that you're at. And then like a little outdoor area. And it wasn't until my kids got a little bit older that we started branching out and doing, I guess, more like wildernessy hikes. I don't know if you could call it that where we live. But I'd say just, you know, ask around, ask friends where they like to go, try to look up trails online. There's so many resources online. Lots of people like to post about their hikes that they do in all different areas. So you can find a lot of information that way. And then we also go into like LA and Pasadena, not so much, not like a couple times a year. And it's crazy the things you can find, like little pockets of nature in the midst of the city. Like in Pasadena, there's multiple waterfall hikes that we take, and we'll be driving all through the city, and then all of a sudden you turn off and there's a little trail and you go down, and I mean, you can hike like a mile into a waterfall, and it's beautiful. But those drives are longer for us. So for me, I usually like to get an audiobook, and then we'll listen to our audiobook while we drive there in traffic, like lots and lots of traffic usually, and on the way back. So it's like beneficial. We get two really good things. We get to listen to some of our school books or like a good free read, and then we also get to hike. So that's pretty much all I got. What about you, Allison?
Well, I currently live in Seattle, which is city. Now, before kids, I lived for a short time in Chicago, so now I see Seattle as like a little city. But it's urban. I live about 5 miles from like the main touristy area. And I've also lived in Portland. That's kind of like even smaller city, but city. And then I've lived in a ton of suburbs. I have never lived in the country. I have never lived somewhere where I had all this land and we could roam free. I've always lived somewhere where neighbors are breathing down my neck and everybody can see you and know what you're doing. Being in the city, I've learned that there's actually a lot around that we can take advantage of. There's always nature centers around, and if you Google where you live, I'm sure you will find some. Some are better than others, but they're there. There's a ton of museums for us to take advantage of. There's gardens. Cities always have parks and gardens. So even if you can't get out and like run through some open field, you could pick a tree around you to watch with each season, and you could study how that tree changes. It's probably good not to pick an evergreen.
They do change. There are changes that they go through.
That's true. They just might not be as noticeable. Maybe when you get more experience.
Yeah.
You could even plant like a small garden box. It doesn't have to be huge. You could get a small one and you could watch that plant grow with your kids. There's usually bodies of water around in a city area, whether it's a creek, a pond, at a park, a river. You might live near the ocean in your city like Seattle. I mean, Seattle is a nice city to live in because it is in the Pacific Northwest, so there's a lot of raw nature here. But I've also learned that we have to drive to places, so I don't always just walk out my door and I'm there, but I plan, right? It takes a little more thought. I pick somewhere new to go once a month or once every 2 months. We'll drive farther out of the city to go somewhere because right out of the city, you're going to have stuff all around you to take advantage of. So I think it can offer a lot. Even if you are like in a huge urban city, if you go on a walk around a block or two, you're going to find some cute little park or courtyard area, and you can stop and listen for birds. Cities always plant flowers everywhere that have to go with the seasons. I remember that when I lived in Chicago, and Seattle does that too, which is awesome. So right now there's daffodils everywhere. Pretty soon it'll be tulips, and Christmas time you see like the Christmas flowers everywhere. So there are a lot of cool advantages you do get in the city where you don't always have to be the one planning those things, but you can go out and find them and study that spring flower out there. So I've actually come to love that.
One thing that you just mentioned about taking a walk, it's always fun to like go with the idea in your head of how no matter how much we try to develop, nature fights back. And, you know, walking a sidewalk, you'll see like dandelions pushing through the cracks or, you know, so just going out with the idea like, hey guys, let's look to see in this developed area where man is covering everything with concrete and buildings. Let's see where nature is fighting back and, you know, popping through the little cracks. And, you know, some people look at that as weeds, but it truly is beauty, you know.
You can always find bugs.
Yeah.
You could even order like those little caterpillars from Insect Lore and grow some, watch the butterflies grow and release them in your city in a park somewhere. And, so there's things that you can do in your own home for nature study too.
Yeah, I think it's really important to have your children be aware of what's in your own backyard, even if your backyard is just an apartment balcony, because you can put a window box out there and you can have nature, and you can put a bird feeder out there and the birds will come. If you put the feeder out there, they will come. The squirrels, depending on where your feeder is, they will come too. So you can do things to intentionally invite nature into your life. And I think looking around at a lot of suburbs, go in and they just flatten the whole neighborhood and then they put up houses. But then they go in and they put new trees in and they put new shrubs and new flowers. And then the homeowners come in and they do more. And you're right, Christy, as much as we push against it with development, nature keeps fighting back. And when you have a newer neighborhood and everything is small, you can still go around and learn the different trees that have been planted in your neighborhood, whether you have an established neighborhood or a new one. So I think it's just really important to encourage yourself and your children to start paying attention to what's right outside your own door. And then you can start looking farther and making those special day trips to go visit nature centers or go to a nearby lake or park.
Yeah, I think it begins, I've said this before, it begins with us. We are to set examples for our children. And if we have like a Debbie Downer attitude, like, oh, we live in the city, there's nothing here to see, I wish we lived in the country, especially if we're on Instagram and we follow people who are surrounded by gorgeous hills and open fields and wildflowers, it's easy to just be down about where we live and say, well, we don't have these things here. But there truly is beauty to be found everywhere. And if our children see that we have that attitude, they will develop that attitude as well.
Yeah. I mean, I've been there too. I get it. There was a time when we had 4 kids and we lived in an apartment in the middle of like downtown Seattle for a short season when we were in between places. And I mean, it's not that great to take 4 kids walking through one of the busiest areas of the city, mostly because you're like, don't run ahead of me, you're going to get hit by a car. Or like, don't touch that. You're right. Like, there's something dirty right there and I don't want you licking it, you know? But then if I would find a little park near me, because there are parks always around, we would notice, my kids would notice naturally, even if I wasn't, but the plants and the flowers growing, all you have to do is lift up a rock and you're going to probably find some sort of bug underneath it that you can look at too. So
Didn't you?
Yeah, you just have to be creative.
Didn't you find like wild growing blackberries there? I thought you remember.
Yeah, in Seattle, they grow everywhere. There's like huge blackberry bushes, which is awesome. You don't have to plant them. People see them as a weed and kill them, which I think is kind of sad. My kids eat them up. But not every city is like Seattle. I know that, but there are definitely ways to be creative and you just have to be intentional.
Yeah, I know in Southern California, if you look up free days for museums like natural history museums or the Huntington Library, you can usually all of those places will do a free day per month. And so you don't even have to pay to get in. They'll do homeschool days. And then they have like one free day, like the beginning of the month, like the first Tuesday of the month, most of the LA museums do. So it's like, even if you plan ahead, you can get into these really cool places for free. But you just have to look it up online, find out what your city does for families. A lot of cities will do good, nice things like that. But all right, guys. Well, thank you so much for listening again. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can check us out on Instagram at Nature Pal Exchange and our website, naturepalexchange.com, and hashtag your pictures to Nature Pal Exchange. Thanks for watching.